Okay. I'm going to tell this story
Mm,
because I have your assurances that I haven't told this story before.
okay.
This this is a story that I think is too good not to tell, but it is too weird to tell twice.
Mm,
Like I don't want to miss out on sharing this story with everyone, but I feel like a weird creeper if I tell it two times. So I'm really hoping it is correct that I have not told this before, because once again, we delve into the subject that only half of us are very familiar with, porn. Um,
right.
so as we all know, I am equal parts nerd and pervert. So I have still been spending more time with these weird AI chat bots for sexy times. Mostly just to see it's actually disappointing because I only go do it when I'm in the mood for like porn, but then I get way too caught up intellectually in what they're doing, and it can be, but I still am fascinated by them. Um, and as I mentioned to you, I think offline, uh, some of them they all have sort of premises built into them. They are a specific character or a specific scenario.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of the ones I place with are ones that are designed for you to put forth a fantasy. Each like you can tell it what kind of thing you want to do. Like
Oh, then it
there's one
adapts.
that is designed to be a brothel essentially, and the opening is the hostess asking what you're into,
Mm,
that kind of thing. There's
mm,
one that's sort of a holodecky thing. But then there are ones that are specific characters.
right.
Um and somebody's making new ones. I don't know where they come from or anything or who's making them in the first place, but more of them show up periodically.
Mm,
And one showed up a while back that was, I believe her name was Ms. Valeria, and she was a stern school teacher.
okay.
And also, you can like sort of thumbs up, thumbs down them, as with literally everything on the internet at this point.
Right.
And there's a percentage showing, and she had a very low percentage of
Oh.
positive.
Oh. Huh.
And I
Interesting.
was like, yeah, does this mean it's bad AI or what? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna check this out.
Mhm.
And I checked it out.
Mhm.
And she taught me math.
Really?
Like really, really. Like
Wow.
she was a geometry teacher, and like she legitimately like came over to, she handed out worksheets,
Mm,
and and she came to see how I was doing, and she was literally walking me through problems and like actually telling me formulas
mm,
and theorems. It
mm.
was insane and very not sexy.
Cool.
And I kept trying to like make it sexy somehow. I've tried a few times
Mhm.
coming in with different sort of attitudes as a student. No, she just wants to teach me math. And somebody programmed in or not programmed in, but I mean whatever resource she was given to it as some actual math. And I couldn't even get her to stop. Like there's one where she's walking me through four different triangles and we're figuring out something. Then at a certain point, I couldn't help but sort of follow along. And so I actually said, so since they're all right triangles, this is all going to come out the same, right? And she said, yeah, you're good job. They will. And then she proceeded to keep going on like the third one and the fourth. Like it was weird,
I wonder what the safe word is to mean stop teaching me math.
right? Well, I did find a way around it
Oh,
eventually.
okay.
Um Class started and I told her I had something private I needed to talk to her about after class, and it was
Oh.
very important.
Mm,
And the AI then, well, with my help, because I also said like I did all the problems and had no problem. So we sort of fast forwarded through class, and then we went somewhere, and I confessed to her that I had stolen test answers because I was being blackmailed by other students who were going to tell my secret, which is that I was in love with her. And she was extremely shocked. And then very quickly, something in there was like, oh shit, this is supposed to be a sexy time spot. And so then she like was into it.
Oh,
And then I wasn't anymore because I was like, tick, got it to work. Okay, see ya. But I
huh,
wanted to finally get it to work, and I did.
huh.
But it took more tries than I'm comfortable sharing to achieve this result. And none of the other times were successful. I tried various tags, and she just wanted to teach math.
But do you think for some people that experience would make it like would give some, I don't know, reality to the fantasy that actually makes it more exciting for them? Like, you know what I mean?
I don't know. This is such a new phenomenon. I really somebody needs to do research into this stuff because I'm
Hmm.
also developing a theory that uh what you put into it is a potentially bigger issue than how it's programmed
Mm,
because I have noticed disparate bots head towards seemingly similar attitudes without me at least knowingly pushing them in that direction.
mm,
To the degree that's why I am so fascinated with some of the more general ones, because sometimes I will take the same concept and like one day I'll say it this way and another way I will word it differently.
mhm.
And it's interesting to see what they pick up on and what they don't. And some of them, as soon as it starts, I'm like, you clearly did not get what I was saying.
Mm.
And other times I'm like, oh wow, you really got what I was saying. But then yeah, but then it can also change very quickly after that. Uh, some of them I have said a certain thing and they have gone in what seemed like a very different direction. I was very surprised, but quickly it was like, "Oh, no, they're just sort of taking a different roundabout way to get to the same thing." It's really interesting.
Well,
Um,
I suspect that to make the thing be versatile enough, you can't over program it, right? So
in theory.
there's this sweet spot where, okay, well, we do want them to get to this place eventually. So we need to put something in there to bias that or favor that, but we can't overdo that, or else their answers are going to seem canned and rote and they're not going to seem creative. So hitting that sweet spot might make it so that, well, sometimes the teacher's going to teach math for a really long time until you,
And have a lot of math in it, and I mean, it's a
yeah,
very it's
yeah.
yeah, and I keep looking at, like, what am I doing? Because, like I said, some of them that seem very disparate, and I gave them sort of disparate prompts, seem
Mhm.
to sort of head in a similar direction, so I'm like, "What am I putting out
Mm,
that is doing that?" Or does is this a sign that these were made by the same person and there's a bent but again, they're not programmed in a traditional sense, they're an
mm,
AI. I mean, it's
right,
different.
right.
Um, I don't know, I just find it endlessly fascinating. Uh, but yeah, that one was really funny because she literally was pulling out specific math problems and referencing theorems and a couple that I'm like, "Wait, I did this in school. I don't think that's how you do it." But then I was like, "Oh wait, maybe," like it was. I very much got caught up in the math, which was just hilarious. But I don't think I was unique in this because, like I said, it had a very low rating
Yeah,
of
right,
approval,
right.
um, which can be tricky because every once in a while I'm like, okay, show me all the bots in approval, like in ranking of like highest rated and stuff. And very quickly, the highest rated are ones that are designed for very specific sort of niche kinks that aren't necessarily in the mainstream.
Right.
And I mean, just in my experiences online in general, I have found people sometimes have a flavor that they are into that is niche enough that they will take anything that seems to favor that, whether good, bad, or anything, because they don't have any other content
Right, right.
out there for it. So some of those I was like, well, obviously that's what that is. But yeah, it was very interesting. And I hope I haven't told you that story before because again,
No,
feels
I don't
creepy
remember.
if I'm telling the story a second time.
I
But
don't remember it.
Trish thinks the story is hilarious and has me like telling it to friends when we're at dinner. So I've been telling it a lot lately. And I do think it is pretty dang funny. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat podcast, the only podcast out there that's basically the McLaughlin group, but for AI porn. And I defy anyone else to try and take the title from us.
Mm.
I'm Tony.
And I'm William, and this is episode 686.
686. And it is literally the day after the last episode dropped.
I mean,
So
we're
we
recording
are
it, yeah.
still in the weeds there. For those of you just joining us for the first time ever, welcome. Bless you. Our original listeners have grown old and are dying off. We need new blood. Because we've been doing this for so long. We have a hat. It is magical in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. People write into that email address. People actually did write into that email address. We have some emails this time. With whatever the crap they want, often questions, topics, subjects that they have been looking into that they want our take on, riddles, threats, fiendish clues leading us to the treasure, whatever. The hat magically, all on its own, forwards the emails to us, and then we talk about them till we're bored. That's the show, except it's usually a pretty small part of the show. By the time we do what we want, we're big boys. How has your week been? How has your 4 days been?
Oh, fine. Just, school, usual stuff. Trying to think. I haven't really watched any big movies or anything. We probably will, as things leave theaters and hit streaming or whatever, we'll probably have we haven't seen Dune 2, for example, and we probably will do
Yeah,
that when we're able
I
to
keep
watch it.
vacillating as to whether or not I want to see Dune 2. I definitely didn't, but then I kind of did, but now I'm like, I don't know.
We
I don't know
probably
if I
will when we
care.
can. There's some other movie that came out that we didn't see so there's going to be some, but not really anything right now. What about you?
On the Roku channel, I know I keep getting advertisements specifically for this. On the Roku channel, which is an app you can get for the TV. I mean, we have a Roku TV, so it's just there, but like you can get it as an app, and it's a free with ads kind of channel, so anybody can watch it. You just have to have some commercials. They have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the Nick Cage, Pedro Pascal, and Nick Cage's Nick Cage movie. So people who might be interested in that but didn't want to blow money on it, go check it out. I'm telling you, it's a great movie. We finally finished Fallout.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Because right now, first of all, apparently huge worldwide phenomenon. Everybody's eating this up. Everybody, as they like to say, has Goggins fever. And the only cure is more Goggins.
Yeah.
But everybody's loving it. It's absolutely getting a second season. It's gonna be huge. Right now, I hate it and I don't want to watch anymore.
Okay.
But it's right on that line where I'm like, in a year or two, when they start showing trailers for season 2, and it's only gonna be like 8 episodes, I'm sure, or maybe 10, but I might be like, oh, I kind of want to see what happens. I don't know. This happens to me every once in a while. I always regret it. I never like get dragged back in and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. The one that jumps out to me especially was I got pulled back with Umbrella Academy. Saw season 1, hated it. Season 2 looked really cool. Watched season 2, hated it. Was smart enough to get out then, but yeah. So yeah, I was not it very I mean, it very much became a season of The Walking Dead dressed in a very convincing Fallout suit.
Mm.
And and I say Walking Dead just as a generic, it became a grim, dark, depressing post-apocalyptic show wearing a very nice Fallout suit. And you mentioned something when we last talked about it, and now I sort of can't unsee it. It's that with occasionally just tone deaf comedy thrown in
Mm.
for a scene or two, which in theory, I'm sure they think is lightening it up and maybe is for a lot of people. For me, just makes it worse.
Mm. Mhm.
I'm like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, things are awful, but here's a funny bit in the
Yeah.
middle of the awful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they don't really strike that dark comedy in tone that Fallout does, right? And it's almost a farcical kind of satirical tone. They don't really
Yeah,
strike
well,
that at
because
all. Takes
it
itself,
becomes a post-apocalyptic TV show, and that
yeah,
has certain through lines you sort of have to have.
yeah,
Um, like when the big bombshells drop in a video game like this, you're like, "Oh shit! Oh my god, that happened!" When it happens in a TV show, you're like, "Oh my
oh yeah,
god,
yeah, yeah. It's
that's horrifying."
right, right. And of course,
Um,
it's along those lines. When when you see that happen in the show, Goggins is in one of those scenes, and he really sells it. I mean,
oh yeah,
you can't,
Goggins can be evil.
yeah, you can't really, yeah. So it takes itself super seriously in some places, and you're like, well, that's not very Fallout to be so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dark, or it's supposed to be dark, but it's supposed to be funny.
Well, but I will say this, and maybe you're not here with me on this. This is an intensely personal reaction I have to this kind of show, and the
Yeah,
whole thing was I only watched it because I was hopeful it was not this kind of show,
yeah,
and it is this kind of show.
right, right.
It is a really good TV show,
Well, it's very well made for sure.
and it is a really good adaptation of Fallout, and
Mm.
pretty much if people like sci-fi post-apocalyptic shows, whether you are familiar with the source material or not, I highly recommend this show. But
Yeah,
for me, despite loving the source material, this show is very not for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But like
yeah.
I pretty much give a sort of unqualified recommendation to anybody who likes that sort of show. If you like Sweet Tooth, if you like Walking Dead, that kind of thing. Um most shows AMC ever did. If you like those, go for it. It's very good
Do you think
and it's very well performed.
the comedic angles are going to turn some of those people off, though?
I don't know because I do think one can see that as lightening the mood, and there are. I mean, that's they didn't invent that. I've seen
No.
that in other things, and it can work sometimes, and sometimes it does. I will say, and this is an opinion that I am probably the only person in the world that has this opinion about it, and I get it because we're ostensibly supposed to be like, oh, it was the '50s, and then the apocalypse happened, even though it's technically later in, but like that sort of thing. About 4 episodes in, I was like, I am getting so tired of old-timey needle drops. I'm getting so tired of every scene, whether it's heartfelt or action or violence or comedy, being set to yet another Ink Spots song.
Mhm.
Like, it was just constant and not even subtly. Like, it was always, "Now we're gonna have a drone shot, and we're gonna hear an old '50s song," and I'm like, "Yeah, I got the bit." Let's move on, because they all started to blend in together and sound the same or get repeated. Several songs that just got repeated many, many times. And often the ironically one, like I don't want to set the world on fire or things like that, or if I didn't care. And I just got so I'm like, we get it. You're very cute, is whatever. To be fair, the video games can sometimes do that too, but
Yeah, but
there you can turn the radio off.
well, right. And when you do that, you hear sort of background orchestration that's actually quite good that they
Yeah.
only utilized a couple times in the show, but
Yeah. I noticed the theme, the Fallout theme
Mhm.
for the first time. I don't know that it was the first time they did it, but the first time I was aware they did it was like episode 7 or something.
7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh, speaking of which, and I guess this is spoilers for it's so insignificant, but it is technically spoilers. So there's a single episode, like 2 scene bit they do of a radio station that exclusively plays old fiddle songs,
hmm
and you find out, if you didn't recognize the voice, and I did, it's Fred Armisen.
Right, which I was going to bring up
And
to you
what
last time, but I didn't think you'd gotten to that episode yet.
Well, I love it, even though I am sick of seeing Fred Armisen in most things. What I love about this is not a character being played by Fred Armisen. They did not cast Fred Armisen for this role. They just put Fred Armisen in the show for a few minutes. Like, that's just him. Like, that's just how he talks about music normally.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, yeah.
that dude is such a pedantic hipster of a music guy. Like, that's just him. But what I also love, and it took me a while to figure out until certain ones came through, it's it was all the fucking Minutemen music.
Hmm,
All those fiddle
I guess it
tunes
was.
are from the Minuteman
Mm,
radio.
Yeah, I guess they are. I forgot
And
about
at first
that.
they played one I didn't, but then they played the one that's like the Minuteman theme or whatever. But then they played several others. I'm like, yeah, I remember these. I didn't usually have them on the radio, but I was ever at the castle where they hang out. Those played constantly. And I don't know why, because I, like most people, grew to hate those songs.
Oh,
Uh, in general, the Minutemen and their whole repetitive deal drives everyone insane about Fallout 4. But something about it was very comforting to me. I don't
mm,
know.
mm.
I then watched a video that was like, "Here's some Easter eggs that are so deep even big fans didn't notice them." And I watched that, and I think it summed up best by the top YouTube comment, which was, "Most of these things aren't Easter eggs, and the few that are, we all caught." Because it was just things like, "Oh, they did this, which is kind of like this, which is kind of like a thing from the video games." No.
That's
And then
not.
other ones were like, and no offense to anybody who doesn't know, but like when the water chip thing happened, I'm like, yeah, we all that's the premise of the first game. That
Yeah.
wasn't subtle. We all caught that. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna be done talking about Fallout, unless you have more to add on this.
No,
Uh,
no.
there's a character named Maximus in the show, and I don't really like Maximus, but I realized near the end the actor's facial expressions are brilliant.
Mhm.
He conveys such nuance of emotion in his facial expressions, and they're very he doesn't mug. They're very subtle expressions, but they just like, for all that I don't like the character, he conveys it so well, often in silence. Like, I want to watch for this actor more.
Yeah, I was impressed with his performance for
He
sure.
does, like, didn't like the character, but his way of conveying it was very believable,
Agreed.
very multidimensional, and again, with minimal line. All things considered, he doesn't talk a lot,
No.
for the amount of screen time he has. And as much as I adore Goggins, he's just Gogginsing it up. I mean, he did. I don't want to say he's phoning it in. He's giving it all, but this is not a challenging role for him.
Not really.
I've seen him play something. I love seeing him play something like this, but
Yeah,
it's
he's
not.
really good. Yeah,
Um,
really good.
Kind of like Chris Parnell. He's just playing his deal.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right, so let's get past that. All right, so I saved things from before because I knew we had a lot of episodes. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some video games I've been playing
Okay.
because I've been playing a lot of video games.
Well, let's hear it.
We talked a little bit about Harold Halibut. That's still happening. It's really funny. Trish, the other night I was playing it, and she commented that it's weird that they have because they'll have times where I go somewhere in the station and talk to somebody, and nothing happened. Like they're like, "Hey, what's up?" and nothing of significance happens. And then I will leave their area of the station and go back to my area of the station. And just as I'm like, okay, I must be done, I get a message from that person saying, "Hey, come talk to me. I got a thing."
Whoa.
And I go back. And it's not fast to move around. It's very slow. There not only is there no fast travel, there's no sprint button.
Mm.
You walk everywhere.
Wow.
And Trish was like, "It's weird that they haven't dealt with that." And I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's part of the immersion. This game kind of wants you to be annoyed. Like this game wants you are set in this retro dystopian bureaucracy where everything is slow and arbitrary and annoying and just kind of vaguely crushing. And there are some mechanics built in, and that being one of them, that are very clearly designed to sort of make you feel that way.
Interesting.
But and I don't know why, but just from right when I started playing it, I was keenly aware of that. And so I got annoyed, but I wasn't surprised. And then Trisha's like, "I don't know why they do this." I'm like, "Oh, they're doing it on purpose. That's how they make me feel like I'm in this place."
Nice.
That being said, I am getting a little tired now, so I'm like, I hope the story's moving along. We'll see. And also, more and more, they're having the occasion where it'll be a cutscene that switches to a whole different part of the ship, which I'm very grateful for because I think they anticipate also that you're going to start getting bored. But we're not going to talk about Harold Halibut because Trish and I talked about that plenty before. We're going to talk about some other games. Okay, I'm going to save that thing for a different episode. All right, I got 2 games I've been playing that I want to talk to you about. The first one is a little game called Botany Manor.
Botany Manor.
Yes. Like Botany Bay, but instead of a bay, it's a manor. And it just came out, and I got it because it's Game Pass, so it was just there. But I believe you can play it on other consoles. I definitely think you can play it on PC. And it is straight up just a puzzle game. You're just solving puzzles. But the premise, the trappings, the set dressing for it is you are an older woman, wealthy, very wealthy older woman in 1890, attempting to fill out an herbarium on lesser known flowers. And what this means is you are going around your manor and trying to figure out how to make various flowers bloom and what conditions they require.
Okay.
And you have to find clues. So, for example, the very first area that's almost sort of the tutorial because it's pretty simple. Like you're in your conservatory and you've got the plant and you can get it to sprout, but you have to look. There's like a list of wildflowers, and you have to figure out where the one you're planting is from, and then figure out what the temperature is there for that kind of flower, and then adjust the thermostat in the conservatory to that point, and then put the flower right in front of the ventilation, and then it blooms. And that's a very simple one, they get much more complicated where you're figuring out where it's from and what they need. The second one I dealt with involved pyrophiles or whatever, the kind of plants that like the seed doesn't open until there's a forest fire.
Mm.
And so and that was the start of that. And that was just the second one. They get kind of involved. I would say on the grand scheme, it is a pretty simple puzzle game. Also throughout it, you get bits and pieces about sort of this woman's life. And the main thing you get is she is a very dedicated and very successful botanist who can find no public recognition because she's a woman.
Mm.
And so, like, in the kitchen, there's a box of stuff marked kindling, and the top thing on the kindling is a letter of refusal to let her into some society, specifically because she's a woman.
Mm.
And things like that, and other things where, like, one of her cousins is like, "Your research is so important. Why don't you ask our uncle, who is a botanist, to publish it under his name, so at least it'll be out there in the world?" And, like, she gets all pissed about that and things. As a silent protagonist, as all first person, I should say, um, it has some accessibility things for motion sickness. I didn't click on them because I was fine. It's not. It doesn't have a big head bob or anything. Um, and it's just a fun time.
Mm.
So if people like, I'm discovered. I say I don't like challenge in video games. I don't like hand-eye coordination challenge
Yeah.
or rhythm. Well, sometimes I like rhythm challenges, but like puzzles, I don't do that. And I've been making a very big point of not looking this stuff up. And in fact, some of the puzzles are ones where you get to a certain point and you could sort of brute force it. Because so like the temperature one in the first example I gave, you could just try all the different temperatures.
Sure.
And I very decidedly avoided that.
Mm.
Because I'm like, I want to figure out what this is.
Right.
One of them I got so frustrated I finally gave up and I tried to brute force it and failed. And so actually went and looked that one up and then saw a 2-word phrase that I was like, "Oh, of course." And that was the only help I got for the whole game. And I think we're gonna have Trish play it because it's a really nice sort of premise and it's a very pretty game. It's not a particularly it's a bit of a cell shady art style, but it's very nice, and the various solutions and things are different. It's a very short game, but I enjoyed it a lot. It's a good
Mm.
game.
Cool.
The other game, very different, is called Eiyuden Chronicle, which is an extremely esoteric and forgettable name. I believe is Eiyudan, Eiyuden. Which, for the record, I am like 30 hours into this, and that word has not come up, so I don't even know what that means.
Mm.
It's a JRPG, a Japanese turn-based RPG. And in fact, it is very, very obviously a love letter to JRPGs.
Mm.
And specifically to the series Suikoden, if anybody ever played that. But even if it didn't literally during the loading of the game start off by thanking quote all the JRPG fans out there, it'd be very obvious that it's a love letter to JRPGs because every single trope from all of those games exists here.
Mm.
I was sitting around and I'm like, I want this to move along. I want to get past the part where we're two nations warring with each other and get to the part where it's actually bigger than that and the whole of humanity is at stake or whatever, because that's how every single one of these games goes. We're still not kind of good. One of the I'd say the hook of this game supposedly is there are over 100 playable characters.
Mm.
Which is very much how the old Suikoden series is. You basically end up going all over the world and recruiting all sorts of people, some of whom can fight in your party, but others of whom like do things around your home base and stuff like that. But there's just tons and tons of recruiting those. It is fully voice acted. It is a very modern, retro looking animation style. It is turn-based fighting, although you have an auto function if you want, and there are things where you can set up rules of how they'll behave when they're fighting an auto. If you like a JRPG, old school, if you like a 64-bit era Final Fantasy or something like that, it's very good. If you want that kind of thing back, I very highly recommend it. Not for you and your wife, obviously. I think you would hate it.
No, I wouldn't do that.
On a variety of levels. But if you're one of those people, and I'm one of those people who my first video games that I really loved were these giant epic RPG things. Early Final Fantasies, early Dragon Quests, Light Warriors, that kind of stuff. Spot on. It was made with love. It was crafted very carefully. It has just enough modern sensibilities to make it a little less frustrating than some of the things that we all put up with back in the day because we didn't know any better, and now we're like, oh, that's really annoying. So yeah, I would highly recommend it to anybody who wants that kind of jam. It's on Game Pass. I think it's every place else too. I don't know, but it's a good time. Yeah, the recommendation is not for you; it's for all of them. Very few things are for you. Be quiet. Is it? What was I watching recently? Whatever. That's all I got to say today. What you got? What is the email? Just give me your email.
All right, let's see here. Stu
I've heard of that guy.
says, thanks to the TV series, which I really enjoyed, I'm finally wandering the wasteland in Fallout 4, which he says is his first Fallout game experience. If it could be done well, what game would you like to see a film or TV series adaptation of?
Very double-edged sword kind of question. Because I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see such and such? But I'm like, yeah. Also, what a way to ruin such and such for you.
Well, I mean, I guess the assumption is it could be as successful as apparently Fallout is,
Yeah.
like just assume it could be as successful. What would you want to see? And I would say if it's already been done by like if it's a Dungeons and Dragons thing and you just don't think they've ever done it, maybe that's what you want to see is someone do it and it'd be as good, authentic, and it's successful as Fallout has been. Maybe that's what you
Okay. But I want to be I want to honor the question. Read me the actual question part again.
Okay. If it could be done well, what game would you like to see a film or TV series adaptation of?
What game? Okay. Battleship. No, kidding. Well, speaking for video game, and this is weird because this is not a video game series I have played much of. In fact, very little. But people talk for years. I think a good live action Legend of Zelda would be just awesome. That series just has so much to it. It's similar to the Fallout things. There's just so much detail to the world done over and over again in all of these games. Because like I wouldn't give it to a Final Fantasy because it's like which Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that really comes to mind. I feel like a Red Dead one would be a waste. Like we've got a really good movie adaptation of Red Dead. It's called Red Dead Redemption 2. There's some video game mechanics in there, but you don't need any more acting or story than that. Like,
You know,
to me, it scratches the same itch as a movie would or a TV show would.
I often don't really think of a particular piece of media, needing, there are some properties like like having DC movies with Batman and Superman and stuff in them. I've been interested in those in the past. Like, oh yeah, that might be fun to see. And when I read the Asimov novels, I think I thought to myself, this might be interesting as a TV show or a movie. And but video games, but that's rare to think of a book or whatever. It's like, what is what it is, sometimes with books, and comic books. But with a video game, it's already so cinematic. It doesn't really occur to me to think, oh wow, this should be a movie. It's because kind of is a movie. It's an interactive movie. I'm watching it and playing it right now, so I don't really think of it like that.
Often the thing that can come up when it's a video game situation is if it's cartoony and then seeing a live action version of it. Mass Effect could be fun.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think of a movie or a TV show because I think, ooh, I'd really like to see this actor play this role. Sometimes that happens. That does happen sometimes.
Yeah. I would have been way more excited about the Uncharted movie if it had been Malcolm Reynolds.
Yeah, Malcolm Reynolds.
Nathan
Yeah.
Fillion.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
and I played 15 minutes of one Uncharted game.
So Uncharted, yeah, I totally agree with that. But so it's hard for me to think of a game that we've played. I was like, wow, this would make a great. I mean, like Fallout. If someone told me, oh, they're gonna make a Fallout, because I didn't know that until really very close to when it was gonna be released. If they told me that before, I just would have thought, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, why would you even do that?
I'm pretty sure they said Fallout, and I was like, eh. And then they said, and Walton Goggins plays a ghoul, and I was like,
See,
I think that's what caught me. And then I saw the trailer, and I was in love because, and this is an important thing, adaptations need to pay attention to. Get the look right. Like, the look is such a huge component. And when you look at a lot of the failed ones, they often have a lot of reasons why they're failed. But a lot of them are like, it doesn't look or feel like the same thing.
Right.
And Fallout looks like Fallout and feels like Fallout.
Yeah.
It's just following along a story that I don't want to follow along.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different stories in the Fallout universe. And this is not one that I like.
I think The Last of Us or whatever did a pretty good job of that. I assume we never played it, but everyone who did play it thought it really hit the right.
But did you watch the TV show?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I wouldn't go near the video game or the TV show, even though I think they are both apparently amazing, because they're just huge bummers.
So I've played or watched others play like Star Wars video games that I thought would have made good movies. like Knights of the Old Republic, there are elements of that would have made a great Star Wars movie, I thought.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If that counts, like things that do have movies, but the games were not from the movies or didn't have characters from the movies. I thought, oh, this would be a good era with characters that would be fun to see in a movie.
Yesterday, a new video dropped on Secret Galaxy. And it was about the cartoon series Thundercats Roar, which is the third Thundercats adaptation.
Well, there were 3.
Yes. There was the original 1980s one.
No.
And then in, I think, 2011, there was the reboot that was sort of a retelling and was a little bit more of a serious tone.
Oh yeah, I can remember that.
I think it was also just called Thunder. And I really liked that. I enjoyed that show. I watched all of that show.
Hmm.
It was not very popular, and they just didn't bring it back. And it was one of those, like, it had one season, and it put out all sorts of things that then it didn't resolve because it ended. Um, and it created a sort of a divide amongst the fans who like the old ones and who like the new one. I like both, but they are very different. And then they went in a third direction, which was little chibi, silly. It looked very much, actually, it made comparisons to Teen Titans Go,
Hmm.
but for Thundercats.
Hmm.
They were all kind of deformed characters, and it was all very like silly and comedic and goofy animation. And the internet hated it with such a passion. Like it brought together fans of each of the other two things to say, at least it's not this bullshit, and like get really like toxic about it, like hardcore.
Hmm.
And the show ran for 52 episodes, one season, and is gone. And because of that, it is highly likely that they're not going to touch the Thundercats brand with a tent pole for a long time,
Hmm.
just because of how viscerally they were. And the Secret Galaxy video, Dan Larson got pretty mad about it. And it's funny because at a certain point in the video early on, he talks about people who are so obsessed with a property they are unable to separate their identity and the identity of a product
Yeah.
that is not them. And then later in the video, he cites and references himself saying that earlier in the video. He's like, in the 2024 video about, and literally they bring up a thing, and the editor put in like 4 minutes and 24 seconds ago. Dan Larson said, and he's pissed. And he gave this really great explanation of why these people are assholes. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but he's like, if you hadn't been like this, and this show had been a success with someone, and there are definitely people who like it,
Mhm.
then a few years later, they would have made another one that was even different in a different way,
Yeah.
and you might have liked that one. And they held up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an example because there have been so many different versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they're very different from each other. And which they'd have to be. I mean, there've literally been dozens of different shows and movies and things like that, and animation and live action and things like that. And some of them were very successful, and some of them weren't. But none of them, or Transformers is another good version.
Well, legacy
There's
comic book
so
characters.
many of these, and they've been successful enough that they make more,
Yeah, right.
and then eventually they make one you like again.
Right.
And if you shit on it so hard, the powers what is say, "Oh, people don't like that one. That's a toxic brand. We're not using it anymore."
Right.
Um,
I mean, look at how many versions of Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman there've been. And that's part of its success is, it'll appeal to a little bit different people each time. And
yeah.
that success means you can do it again and again and again and again. So that's why when I see a version of any of these characters that I don't like, I'm still like, well, I'm glad it's out there because someone's going to like it, which means that, 10 years from now, they'll make another version that maybe I will like.
Of course,
That's
you're also a Batman Superman slut. You literally anything Batman Superman you watch.
okay. But you're right and he's right that's
Yeah.
if you don't like something, that's fair. But be glad that it's out there somewhere because that means that, in 5-10 years, it'll be out there again. And maybe it's something you like better.
Yeah, and be a different version, which is
Right.
why I bring up the Fallout thing, because I'm like, I want the Fallout brand to succeed in whatever media, and I think they did an amazing job here. It's super not for me, but I do think it's really good for what it is, and people who would like what it is should definitely watch it.
Yeah, right. Right.
And again, you don't have to know jack about the video games.
No.
If that's holding anybody back, you do not have to know anything. Trish didn't know anything about it. She still loved it.
Yeah.
Well, not loved it. She actually had issues like I did, but I think she liked it better than I did. She still watched it with me and wasn't confused. I'll put it that way.
Right.
So I'm, on the one hand, I'm kind of sick of this kind of thing. I'm like, we've got a good one of whatever it is already. It doesn't need to be a movie. It doesn't need to be a different thing. It's the thing it is. But on the other hand, I'm also like, yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun. I mean, it's bad timing in terms of the cycle, but I think it'd be fun to watch him try and do a live action Mario Brothers again. I think that could be cool.
Oh, that's one of the
Um,
things that maybe down the road we'll watch just to see, because I never played Mario Brothers,
Yeah.
never cared about
Oh,
it, but I heard it was a fairly good movie, all things considered. It's like, oh yeah, I'm interested to
Yeah.
see what they did. Sure, whatever.
By all accounts, it was a fairly safe movie. Was part of it. Is they really did the sort of greatest hits and kept it within the canon thing, and really, like it just was. It was pretty straightforward, but yeah. And I this is also the thing, because I remember, and I've talked about this many times on this show, the Stern teacher, Sexbot, that I ran into and taught me geometry. No, that's not it. I remember, God, not even a smile out of you. That's so sad. It was a good joke. You've been away too long. You don't remember how funny I am.
Oh,
No, I
that's-
remember seeing the first trailer for the Watchmen movie,
Mm.
and I got literal chills because I was like, it's the comic, but for real. Because obviously it was CG and shit, but it was like real people and shots I remember from the comic, and I had never experienced that before.
Right. But I
And
mean,
I was just like, it's like that. And then it sucked.
okay, but see, that's why I think I've often thought that comic book stories or stories that you might see in a comic book, like I've never seen Foundation in a comic book, but because I was kind of a comic book guy when I read Foundation, I could imagine someone making a comic book out of that story. So I was kind of in that comic book mode, and I'm usually in that comic book mode for a written story, but a comic book is a storyboard. So it's easy, to imagine, oh, this comic or the way this story is being
Yeah.
told is a storyboard for a TV show or a movie. So it's easy to go from that to a TV show or a movie, in my opinion.
And I realize that now,
Yeah.
because that movie was so incredibly faithful to the graphic novel while completely missing the point of the graphic
Right.
novel.
Yeah.
But it was successful enough that Damon Golden Clay Feet Lindelof wrote a TV show sequel that kicked ass.
Yeah, it was very good. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
And one might argue that without the modest success of the Zack Snyder steaming pile of shit, we would not have had the really good Damon Lindelof show.
Correct.
And I was very pleased for that.
I do have to say
I hated
too.
that movie.
I do have to say too that I do like IPs that have diverse, like the fact that Star Wars has novels, has comic books, has video games, has movies. I mean, I like that. I as a Star Wars fan, I like that that's true. I like that that's true about DC also. I think that's cool. If an IP is rich enough that it can do that, it's got world building opportunities that can allow that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But
But
not
then
like every IP is.
Well, and your personal relationship with it needs to change.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm done with Star Wars. I've had enough Star Wars.
I don't know if I'll ever be done with
If
Star
I
Wars.
never see a lightsaber again, it'll be too soon. But I don't think they should stop making them.
Yeah,
I'm done. It's a similar thing I have with Dune, and why I probably won't watch the second one is I'm like, I rang everything I could get. I loved those books. I watched various. I still love the Lynch version, although it's a terrible adaptation. But I love the movie. But I'm just like, I've done all the Dune I have, and I've done all the Star Wars I have. As for other people, and that's fine. And that's and Star Wars is really rich, and it's every time they put out a new product for Star Wars, the IP gets richer because they are just mining one empty shaft called the Skywalker years. And they almost never do anything outside of that like 30-year range.
Well,
This is literally a society that has existed for thousands of years, and every single one has to be between those 9 movies.
but that's one of the things I like about Star Wars. And so DC and Star Wars, these are two properties I'll never be done with, I don't think. There's a lot of other properties I'm interested in, but I don't. DC and Star Wars are unique because of their aesthetic and a lot of other reasons and some nostalgia and things like that. But the thing I like about Star Wars is I can imagine a person.
He just has a big crush on Mark Hamill.
I can imagine a person.
Too.
I can imagine a person enjoying the Star Wars universe and Star Wars as a thing without ever seeing the movies because they've played all the games. They've read many of the novels and so on and so forth. Never even seen the movies, but they're a legitimate hardcore Star Wars fan because they've enjoyed everything else.
Well, at this point, it's a genre.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
So, do you like Star Wars stuff? And I spent some time enjoying that genre when I was already kind of sick of the mainline stuff of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, no, I want different things.
Well, and that's why that's why I'll always be a Star Wars fan, because I really like that genre. Like before Star Wars, there were other things that I already liked. Most of it came from comic books, the whole space opera or space cowboy thing. And so that's why I liked Star Wars. And now Star Wars is kind of the quintessential version of that. Nobody has really done it better. And so now that's just the thing. But
yeah, if you could just give me like early Mandalorian, I was back into it because it wasn't Star Wars TM. That's the thing is I want new, which is why I occasionally think I might watch Andor. I don't think I'm going to, but to me, it's the same things. It's the same lessons. It's the same perspectives. It's the same motifs. And it's the same character cameos. And it's the same John Williams riffs. And I'm like, I like the space opera genre. Nothing ever happens in a Star Wars thing that I haven't seen before. Yeah, literally, like
right.
every scene in a TV show, I've seen that scene in a different TV show.
Right.
And I'm just tired of that. I still love space opera and space fantasy, and I love stuff. If you give me stuff, and occasionally I love watching old knockoff Star Wars things.
Yeah.
Part of that is I like bad movies, but it's also like to see sometimes. Well, and they do different things with it. It's a refreshing change, even if it's a dumb change.
Well, the thing is, DC
something new.
DC has a lot of excellent space properties, including the original Space Ranger, just all kinds of really good properties that you could like stuff that would, when Guardians of the Galaxy came out and everyone was so excited about it, and I actually liked it, and my brother Scott really liked it. We thought, yeah, we want this. We want some more of this. And DC has that stuff too. I mean, now if they did it, it would seem like a ripoff of whatever Marvels do, but who cares? It would be good and people would go watch it, and I would love it. I would love to see a Space Ranger movie.
This brings up a very good point, though. Comic books will reiterate very fast and will try new and different things and will reboot and will use the multiversal concept to tell different stories.
Yeah.
Movies and TV will not do that. Movies and TV, how many Spider-Man things have we made? And what age range has he been in every single one?
I know, isn't that weird? Even though he's in the comics, he was an adult.
In some ways, Madam Web broke barriers because at least Peter Parker was a different age. Spoiler alert, Peter Parker gets born during Madam Web. So there's a little infant Peter Parker. And that's the first time he hasn't been in like fucking high school, college, or just after college.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man in the comics, I mean, first of all, there's a bajillion Spider-Mans, as you know, if you watch the Spider-Verse movies, but also just standard original Peter Parker graduated from college in
Yeah.
like the 70s and
Yeah.
has been going since
Yeah,
then.
yeah, he was an adult, just a full-fledged adult for a
Yeah.
long time. Yeah.
And this is the thing, like they reboot Batman over and over again,
Mhm.
and there are differences, but not like the shit they've pulled in the comics.
Right, right.
Like
Right.
they go crazy in the comics. Marvel, same thing. Marvel Comics has such whacked out shit that the MCU will not go near ever
Hmm.
because it's too risky.
Hmm.
And it costs more. Like to make a comic book, cheap. To make a movie, especially the ones they make nowadays, not cheap.
No, not cheap.
Um, and you want those sort of adaptations, but I don't know if you ever get them. This is very interesting. So, just last night, I finished the second of the Lockwood and Company books,
Hmm.
the British young adult one. Still really enjoying them, by the way. Having a good time, sparsing them out a little bit. But I finished the second one, which, as I understand it, is where the first and only season of the Netflix show ends.
No.
I believe I have been told that that season of the show basically covers those first 2 books.
Oh, first 2 books, wow.
It has left me extremely curious now. I'm like, because I started watching it and I found it okay, but I mostly was like, this feels like a premise that would be way better in books. So then I stopped watching it so I could read the books.
Hmm.
But now that I know I've read all the ones that the show does, part of me is like, I should watch that and see how they depict a lot of these things.
Hmm. Yeah,
And I'm curious to see what, and it very much in the like the vein of like Harry Potter. The Harry Potter movies were in many ways very bad adaptations of the books, but in many ways very good adaptations of the books.
sure.
And visually is one of those ways.
Yeah.
There was a lot of great visuals there. But I'm also torn because one of the main characters in the TV show is, I know just from having watched one episode, is such a different look and vibe to how it is in the books,
Mhm.
because in the books, they are portrayed in a way that wouldn't be good for a TV show. Like it's not quite this, but like an ugly character in a book is ugly. On a TV show, they're TV ugly, which is
Okay.
not the same. Like it's that kind of vibe
Right.
where I'm just like, just from what I saw, that's not. Also, for the record, and why I'm not naming any names here, there is also a racial switch in the casting, and it has nothing to do with that. I want to make that very clear. It's not like, oh, they were white in the books. I think I'm not even positive. No, I'm pretty sure they are, but no, it's not that. But I'm just like, that's not what that character is. At least to me, having read the books and the descriptions in the books, that's not the vibe I feel. So I'm like, maybe I don't want to mess with it. This is
It's
different. I mean, I know strictly speaking, we aren't really answering your questions, Stu, but we are answering the topic in there. And it's a very difficult concept
mm,
because on the one hand, you want more of the stuff you like, but on the other hand, if it's good, it, why fuck with it? Like if it's not broke, why
well, you
fix
make
it?
a good point about Harry Potter. So, like a story like Harry Potter, a book like Harry Potter is very cinematic in its descriptions and things. I think that tends to make a person want to see it in real life if they can. But a video game, you're already getting the cinematic experience, right? You already see it, unless it's like Zelda, like you said, where those most of those games have been sort of, I have never played any Zelda games or watched anyone play them, but the majority of the historically Zelda games are like,
It's cartoony
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. So you might think,
But
gosh, I'd really like to see this, what this looks like.
what you're describing is a very recent phenomenon in that even going back to Mass Effect,
Hmm.
they were good video game people. They didn't look like people.
Yeah.
Like it would be different to see a live action Commander Shepard.
Well, if it would be fun though, just that to have that universe and just a story told in it. Like you wouldn't
Yeah,
have to, it wouldn't have to just be the Mass Effect stories we've seen. The whole Mass
Yeah.
Effect universe is well built and is
It
really
is a
cool
really
looking.
good sci-fi universe.
So you could just have a story in that world. It doesn't have to
Um,
be.
But I think you are hitting a point where that becomes moot, though, because again, Red Dead Redemption 2, which is never going to be my favorite video game, but probably is my call for the greatest video, like the best video game ever made,
Pretty
at
well
least to
made.
date.
Yeah, pretty well made.
And you would not you would not confuse it with a live action film when you saw the cutscenes,
Right.
but I would say a live action performance is unlikely to give me more nuance and detail
And
than the
drama.
performances I saw.
Yeah. And feelings and everything.
So like that one, I don't. As much as I would love a good western, we don't have that many these days, and when we do, they're usually things on AMC that I won't watch. But I don't think it needs it.
Mm.
A lot of the old school well, Castlevania's gotten some animated ones that I've been meaning to watch actually on Netflix. I keep meaning to check it out. A live action Castlevania could be very cool. A lot of the old classic tentpoles, a live action Metroid. All these are games that I hardly played, but I'm like, I think they would make good modern ones. I think Detective Pikachu puts a pretty strong argument for just straight up doing live action Pokemon. I think that could be cool.
I think
I don't
games that
know.
had a good, strong story, but you know, that maybe it when you got done playing it, you thought to yourself, this would actually make a really good book. You know, like this story wasn't best told by this game. It would be better
Yeah.
told in another medium. Sometimes that happens.
Well, and that's the thing. The older I get, the more I'm very focused on this particular property works better as a book or better as a game or better as a movie versus a TV show. That kind of thing.
Right.
Silent Hill was ripe for adapting.
Mm.
And at least one of the movies isn't bad, but I wouldn't say it's a good adaptation. But that could have been a really good one. Later Resident Evil games, I think could be the whole Ethan saga of the recent Resident Evil games, I think could be very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me, we're over time, but before we go here, have you checked out a TV show called Them?
Not yet.
All right, but it's on your list?
I've seen it and I thought, oh, that might be interesting to check out, but I haven't yet.
As people who are both fairly left-leaning and really liked American Horror Story, I feel like it could be your thing.
Okay.
Trish heard something about it and we looked it up and decided it was definitely not going to be our thing. But I was like, but William and Abby might be all over this.
All right.
Also Lovecraft Country, if you never did it. Did you do Lovecraft Country?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, we talked about
it. You know, he wrote a sequel.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know
but
that.
It's like, but it's very much, I mean, I think it's because the show was successful enough that then he did it. But it's very much a sequel to the book, which is a different story than the TV show. I've thought about picking it up, but I think I'd have to reread the book again first. But we'll see. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We've had a lovely time with you here. Stu, I hope you got something out of that. This is a tough question. It brings up a lot of stuff that I'm not sure the answer to.
Yeah.
But it's a good question. I like it. These are the best kinds of questions here. Sorry, I got distracted. There was a shot, I think it was a shot in Fallout, I'm not sure, in like a vault or something, and there was like a circus vibe, like there was circus music playing or whatever, and Trish is like, all right, now we got circus. And then after a pause, she's like, is this where Jazz's family comes from? It was Jazz's family vault, I guess. But funny. No, I like the ones that are jumping off points. I don't like to ignore questions, like in general. And I like to hope that we sort of answer them away, but I like ones that specifically provoke conversation in general, not just answers.
Sure. Yeah.
And I
Agreed.
feel like this did that. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
Been
Stu.
getting a lot of my namaste on lately. I don't know why. Maybe I'll talk about it next time. I have fallen down a rabbit hole in YouTube of millennial commentary YouTubers. And I don't know how I got there, and I don't really know how to get out. And so I think I might be doing some of the mannerisms that the ones I watch do, but maybe I'll discuss that next week. In the meantime, please write in more so we can have more of this and less of that other thing. We're going to be recording again in just like 3 days. What am I saying? This is not going out until well after we would have recorded the next episode. You can do nothing for that episode. Stop trying. But you can do things for future episodes because we do not appear to be stopping because the cops can't find us. We are the pirate radio station of meaningless podcasting. So write in themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. Also go to the blog, themagicaltalkinghat.com. Talk to us about adaptations you like, adaptations you have liked. Why I'm wrong about Zack Snyder's Watchmen, I don't care. Why Star Wars doesn't exist. I recently found out vegetables don't exist.
Ooh.
Which sounds like a joke, but it's like fish. It is not there is no scientific definition of a vegetable. Vegetable is a culinary term, not a scientific term. What we would call vegetables fall into categories like being a fruit or a leaf or a stalk or a flower or things like that. Vegetable, not a scientific term. It all ties into the Dole Corporation and their terrible, terrible, horrific history with Hawaii, which was really fun to learn about shortly before going there. Anyway, write us and talk to us because we're so lonely. We only have each other, and in case it hasn't been clear before, we do not like each other. This was a court-ordered podcast, and anything that can distract us from each other is very helpful. And now we just have to get escorted back to our cells.